The summer air was warm and sweet in the mountains of Montana. Camp Wildwood sat beside a clear blue lake, surrounded by tall pine trees that reached toward the stars. 12 children laughed and played around the campfire while their counselors, Jake Morrison and Katie Bell, told scary stories about monsters in the woods. None of them knew that real monsters were watching from above. High in the dark sky, a massive ship hung invisible among the clouds. The Zephyrian mothership was 3 miles long and covered with technology that bent light around it like water. Inside the ship, Admiral Krickstahl stood on the bridge with his long arms crossed behind his back. His gray skin looked pale under the blue lights, and his large black eyes reflected the screens showing the human camp below. "Report," Krickstahl said in his deep voice. His words came out as clicks and hisses, but the translation device turned them into clear speech for his crew. Commander Vexenal stepped forward, his thin body moving with quick, jerky motions. "The specimens are gathered in one location, Admiral. Our scanners show 14 primitive bipeds. They appear to be the smaller versions we discussed." "Excellent." Krickstahl's mouth parts clicked together in what passed for a smile among his people. "These creatures will be perfect for our genetic research. The smaller ones always adapt better to laboratory conditions." Dr. Yix Mora, the chief scientist, looked up from her reading tablet. Her 4 arms moved in different directions as she worked multiple controls at once. "The brain scans show interesting patterns, Admiral. These specimens have unusually active neural networks for such primitive beings." "All the better," Krickstahl replied. "Begin the collection procedure. I want them contained and ready for departure within 1 Earth hour." The children below had no idea what was coming. 10-year-old Amy Rodriguez was trying to catch fireflies in a glass jar, while her friend Ben Carter, who was 12, showed the younger kids how to make shadow puppets with the campfire light. Chris Johnson, 13 years old, sat with the older kids and tried to look brave when Katie Bell told them about ghosts that lived in the old mine shaft up the mountain. Jake Morrison looked at his watch. "Okay, everyone, time to head to the cabins. We have a big hike planned for tomorrow." The children began to complain and ask for 5 more minutes, but Jake and Katie were firm. They started walking the kids back to their wooden cabins when the air above them began to shimmer like heat waves on a hot road. Ben Carter looked up first. He had always been curious about everything, especially science. His father was an engineer and had taught Ben to notice things that seemed wrong or out of place. "Hey," he said, pointing at the sky. "What's that weird?" The words died in his throat as a beam of green light shot down from nowhere and surrounded the entire group. Ben felt his body become heavy and slow, like he was moving through thick honey. Around him, the other children were trying to call out, but their voices sounded strange and far away. Katie Bell tried to run toward the camp's main building where the radio was kept, but her legs would not work right. Jake Morrison reached for his cell phone, but his arms moved so slowly that it took forever just to touch his pocket dot above them. The invisible ship's cargo bay opened like a giant mouth. Smaller ships, no bigger than cars, dropped down through the night air. These scout ships were also invisible, but Ben could see them now because of the strange green light. They looked like silver teardrops with no windows or doors. The light beam lifted the children and counselors off the ground. Ben felt like he was floating in water as the beam carried him up toward one of the scout ships. He could see Amy crying silently as she floated near him, her jar of fireflies still clutched in her small hands. Chris Johnson was trying to shout something, but no sound came out. Nicole Thompson, who was 14 and the oldest of the campers, tried to reach out to comfort the younger children, but the beam held them all in place like invisible chains. One by one, the humans disappeared into the scout ships. The last thing Ben saw before everything went dark was the campfire below, still burning bright and lonely beside the empty lake. On the main ship, Admiral Krickstall watched the collection with satisfaction. "How long until we clear Earth's atmosphere?" he asked. "12 minutes, Admiral," came the reply from his navigation officer. "The specimens are secured in containment cells. All systems show normal readings." "Good. Begin preparations for the jump to hyperspace. I want to be back in Zephyrian territory before these primitives even know we were here." But down at Camp Wildwood, Ben Carter had managed to do something the aliens did not expect. Just before the green light had taken him, he had pressed a small button on his camping gear. It was an emergency beacon his father had given him, small enough to hide in his backpack. Ben's father had made him promise to use it only if something really bad happened. This seemed really bad. The signal was weak, but it reached through the night air to a military base 40 miles away. Colonel Frank Hayes was drinking coffee in his office when the emergency alert came through on his computer screen. He had been in the Army for 20 years and had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. "Sir," his assistant called from the communications room, "we're getting an SOS signal from the Wildwood area. The coordinates match the summer camp location." Colonel Hayes set down his coffee and walked quickly to the communications center. Dr. Lisa Park, a scientist who worked with the military on unusual cases, was already there, looking at the data. "This is not normal," Dr. Park said, her voice tight with worry. "The signal pattern is consistent with the beacon technology we use, but look at these other readings." She pointed to her screen, which showed waves of energy that made no sense. There was massive electromagnetic activity in that area 12 minutes ago. Something with technology far beyond anything we have. Colonel Hayes felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He picked up the secure phone and began making calls. Within minutes, every military base within 200 miles was on high alert. Radar stations turned their dishes toward the Montana mountains, and satellite networks began scanning the skies. But the Zephyrian ship was already gone, carrying 14 humans into the vast darkness of space. 3 days had passed since the Zephyrian ship left Earth's solar system. The massive vessel now traveled through the dark space between stars, its engines humming quietly as it carried its precious cargo toward the alien homeworld dot in the ships. Medical Bay, Dr. Yixmora, prepared to begin her first detailed examination of the human specimens. Her forearms moved with practiced skill as she arranged her scanning equipment and prepared her data tablets. As the chief scientist of the Zephyrian Empire, she had studied hundreds of different species from across the galaxy. These humans should be no different from any other primitive creatures, but she was wrong. In the containment cells 3 levels below, the human children were not behaving like typical specimens at all. Most captured beings would cower in fear or become sick from stress. Instead, these young humans were doing something that puzzled the alien guards, who watched them through the clear walls. Amy Rodriguez sat in her cell with her jar of fireflies, which had somehow survived the journey through space. The 10-year-old girl had discovered that the cell's lighting system responded to movement. By waving her hands in certain patterns, she could make the lights brighter or dimmer. She had been working on this puzzle for 2 days, and now she understood how to control the basic functions of her prison dot in the cell next to her. 12-year-old Ben Carter was studying everything he could see. His father had taught him that understanding how things work was the key to solving any problem. Ben had noticed that the walls of his cell were not solid metal, but some kind of energy field. He had also seen that the guards carried small devices that seemed to control these fields. Chris Johnson, who was 13, had made the most surprising discovery of all. He had found that by tapping on the walls of his cell in different patterns, he could send messages to the other children. The walls carried sound in ways that the aliens had not expected. Within 1 day, all 12 children and their 2 counselors could communicate with each other using a simple code that Chris had invented The alien guards reported these activities to their superiors, but Commander Vexenol dismissed them as meaningless behavior. Primitive creatures often perform repetitive actions when stressed, he told his subordinates. Pay it no attention. But Dr. Yxmora was beginning to notice patterns that worried her. When she reviewed the surveillance recordings, she saw things that did not match what she knew about primitive species. The specimens were not just surviving in captivity. They were adapting and learning at a rate that seemed impossible. She decided to begin her examinations immediately. The first subject brought to her lab was Nicole Thompson, the 14-year-old who had been trying to comfort the younger children. When they were captured, Nicole walked into the examination room with her head held high, showing no fear, even though she was surrounded by creatures that looked like nightmares. Dr. Yxmora activated her scanning equipment and began to study the human girl. What she found made her stop and check her instruments twice. The neural activity in this young specimen's brain was unlike anything she had ever seen. Fascinating, the doctor whispered to herself as she studied the readings. The emotional processing centers are incredibly developed. And these connection patterns between brain regions. She tried a simple test. Using her equipment, she showed Nicole images of the other children in their cells. The girl's brain activity immediately spiked in areas that Dr. Yxmora recognized as protective instincts and empathy responses. But the strength of these reactions was far beyond what she had seen in any other species. Then Nicole did something that made the alien doctor step backward in shock. The girl began to sing. It was a soft, gentle song that Nicole's mother had sung to her when she was scared. The words were simple, about being brave and not being alone. But something happened when Nicole sang that the Zephyrian equipment had never recorded before. The emotional resonance sensors throughout the ship began to detect powerful waves of psychic energy. These waves were so strong that they reached through the ship's hull and touched the minds of every Zephyrian on board. For a moment, each alien felt something they had never experienced before. They felt the warm, protective love that humans call family. Dr. Yxmora stumbled backward, her forearms shaking. In her long career studying alien species, she had never encountered anything like this. These creatures were not just intelligent. They possessed an emotional bond so powerful that it could affect other minds across great distances. She immediately contacted Admiral Krickstahl on the ship's bridge. "Admiral," she said, her voice tight with concern, "we need to discuss these specimens immediately. I believe we may have made an error." Admiral Krickstahl was annoyed by the interruption. He was reviewing star charts and planning their route home. "What kind of error, Doctor? Are the specimens sick?" "No, sir." "They are—" Dr. Yxmora paused, searching for the right words. "They are not what we thought they were. These are not just smaller versions of the adult creatures. These are juveniles of a species with capabilities we do not understand." "Explain." Dr. Yxmora sent her data to the Admiral's personal screen. "Look at these brain scans, sir. The neural development is extraordinary. These young ones show problem-solving abilities that match our own adult population. And their emotional bonding patterns. Double quotes. She paused again. "Admiral, I believe these creatures bond with their offspring in ways that could make them extremely dangerous if separated." Admiral Krickstahl studied the data with growing unease. As a military leader, he had learned to recognize threats, and what he was seeing in these reports made his skin crawl. "Are you saying these primitives could pose a danger to us?" "I am saying, sir, that we may have underestimated their species entirely. If these young ones can adapt to our technology so quickly, and if their emotional bonds are as strong as my readings suggest, then the adult members of their species might... The Admiral's communications officer suddenly interrupted them. "Sir, urgent message from our intelligence division on the whole world." "Put it through." Crickstall ordered. The face of Intelligence Director Zaxter appeared on the main screen. His expression was grim. "Admiral, we have been monitoring the planet where you collected your specimens. The entire world has gone to military alert status. Their satellite networks are actively scanning space, and multiple government systems have united in ways we have never seen before." Admiral Crickstall felt his blood turn cold. "What are you saying, Director?" "I am saying that these creatures are not reacting to your specimen collection the way primitive species usually do. They are not hiding in fear or accepting their loss. They are organizing for war. Double quotes Dr. Yixmora's voice was barely a whisper. "Admiral, I recommend we consider returning the specimens immediately." But Admiral Crickstall's pride would not allow him to admit such a mistake. "Impossible. We are too far from their world now. Continue your research, Doctor. We will proceed as planned." As the call ended, none of the Zephyrians noticed that young Ben Carter had been listening to their conversation through the ship's communication system. He had figured out how to tap into their network using the same principles that let him control his cell's lighting. Ben smiled grimly as he tapped out a message to the other children using Chris Johnson's code. The message was simple. They're scared. Help is coming. Back on Earth, the response to the missing children was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Within 6 hours of Ben Carter's emergency signal, every major military force on the planet was working together. Countries that had been enemies for decades suddenly became allies with one shared goal: bring the children home. General Patricia Cole stood in the command center at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado. The room buzzed with activity as officers from 12 different nations worked side by side. Computer screens showed satellite data, radar sweeps, and tracking calculations that painted a picture of the impossible task ahead of them. Status report. General Cole ordered as she approached the main display table. Captain Steve Baker looked up from his calculations. He was a pilot who had spent 10 years flying experimental aircraft, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this mission. "We've confirmed the trajectory, General. Whatever took our people is moving fast. Faster than anything we thought possible." Dr. Alan Foster, a scientist who had spent his career studying theoretical space travel, pointed to the tracking data on the screen. "The object is already beyond Mars and accelerating. Based on these numbers, it's using some form of faster-than-light propulsion that our physics says should be impossible." General Cole studied the data with grim determination. She was a mother herself, with 2 children at home, and the thought of those 12 kids alone in space made her stomach twist with anger and fear. "How long do we have before they're completely out of reach?" "Unknown, General," Dr. Foster replied. "But if they continue at this speed, they could be in another star system within days." After that ... He did not finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew what he meant. "Then we better move fast," General Cole said. She turned to Captain Baker. "Steve, what's the status on the Endeavour?" Captain Baker smiled for the first time. "In 3 days. The Endeavour was humanity's first experimental faster-than-light ship, built in secret over the past 5 years using technology that most people thought was still science fiction. It had never been tested beyond Earth's orbit. But it was their only hope. She's ready, General. Crew is standing by. We can launch within 12 hours. But 12 hours felt like forever when children were involved. Dr. Foster had an idea that might help. "General, we need to try something. The emergency beacon that one of the kids activated is still transmitting. It's weak, but if we can boost our receivers..." He was interrupted by a young technician who came running across the room with a tablet in her hands. "Dr. Foster, General Cole, you need to see this." The technician, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, was shaking with excitement as she showed them her screen. "We're getting more than just the emergency beacon now. There's another signal, much more complex. It looks like someone is trying to communicate with us. Dr. Foster took the tablet and studied the data. His eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. This is incredible. Someone aboard that alien ship is using the emergency beacon to send us detailed information. Ship specifications, crew numbers, even internal layout diagrams. General Cole leaned closer. One of our people is doing this? Has to be, Dr. Foster said with growing amazement. And whoever it is knows enough about radio technology to turn that simple beacon into a sophisticated communication device. This is genius-level engineering. What they did not know was that the genius in question was 11-year-old Danny Price, who had spent the last year building ham radios with his grandfather. Danny had discovered that the ship's power systems used frequencies similar to Earth radio, and he had figured out how to use Ben's emergency beacon to piggyback a much stronger signal. The information Danny was sending gave Earth's military everything. They needed to plan a rescue mission, but it also told them something else. The children were not just surviving their captivity. They were fighting back. Meanwhile, aboard the Zephyrian ship, Admiral Krickstahl was discovering just how badly he had underestimated the human species. His intelligence officers had spent the past 3 days studying every piece of information they could find about Earth, and what they learned made the Admiral wish he had never heard of the small blue planet. Commander Vexenol entered the Admiral's private chambers with a datapad full of disturbing reports. Sir, you need to review these historical records we downloaded from the human computer networks. Admiral Krickstahl took the pad and began reading. What he saw made his blood run cold. The files showed thousands of years of human warfare, but, more importantly, they showed what humans did when their young were threatened. This cannot be accurate, the Admiral whispered as he read about parents who had fought impossible odds to save their children. Stories of mothers lifting cars to rescue trapped babies. Fathers who had walked through fire to reach their families. Entire communities that had sacrificed everything to protect their young. I verified the data 3 times, sir, Vexenol replied. It appears that humans have an instinctive response to threats against their offspring that overrides all logic and self-preservation. They become ... double quotes. He paused, searching for the right word. Unstoppable. Admiral Krickstahl continued reading and found military records that made his hands shake. Human soldiers who had fought against overwhelming odds when children were in danger. Rescue missions that succeeded despite being mathematically impossible. Most terrifying of all, examples of human technology advancing by decades in mere months when their young were threatened. Sir, Vexenol continued nervously, there's more. Our long-range scanners have detected multiple ships leaving Earth's atmosphere. They appear to be moving in our direction. The Admiral's large black eyes went wide with terror. How many ships? 17 confirmed, sir. All of unknown design. And, sir, Vexenol's voice became very quiet. They're moving faster than our ships can travel. Dr. Yixmora's voice came over the communication system at that moment. Admiral, please come to the laboratory immediately. The specimens are doing something we've never seen before. Admiral Krickstahl and Commander Vexenol rushed to the laboratory level, where they found Dr. Yixmora staring at her monitoring equipment in complete bewilderment. What is it, Doctor? The Admiral demanded. The specimens have somehow taken control of 3 entire sections of the ship, Dr. Yixmora said in a voice filled with disbelief. They figured out how to operate our technology better than our own engineers. The young one, called Ben, has reprogrammed our computer systems. The girl, Amy, has taken control of the environmental controls for half the ship. And the older male, Chris, has somehow accessed our communication networks. Admiral Krickstahl felt the deck plates under his feet vibrate as the ship's engines began to stutter and slow. They're sabotaging our engines? "No, sir," Dr. Yixmore replied with growing horror. "They're not trying to damage the ship. They're trying to slow it down. I think they're trying to make it easier for their people to catch us." At that moment, the ship's main communication system crackled to life. The voice that came through the speakers was young but steady. It was Chris Johnson, speaking from his containment cell with the confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Attention alien crew," Chris said in clear, simple words. "This is Chris Johnson, representing the human children aboard your ship. We have sent your location to our home planet. Our people are coming for us. You have two choices. Surrender now and return us safely, or face the consequences when Earth's military arrives." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Admiral Krickstahl's terrified breathing. "Sir," whispered Commander Vexenol, "what do we do?" Admiral Krickstahl stared at the communication panel, realizing that he was no longer the one in control of this situation. Somehow, impossibly, 12 human children and 2 young adults had turned his advanced warship into their own weapon, and their parents were coming. The confrontation happened near Jupiter's Great Red Storm, where the swirling clouds looked like an angry eye watching the events unfold. The Zephyrian mothership hung dead in space, its engines shut down by the human children who had taken control of its systems. Around it, 17 Earth vessels moved in perfect formation, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun. Captain Steve Baker stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, humanity's first faster-than-light ship. Behind him, General Patricia Cole and Dr. Alan Foster watched the alien vessel through the main viewing screen. None of them could quite believe they had made it this far. "Open a channel," General Cole ordered. The face of Admiral Krickstahl appeared on their screen. The alien leader looked tired and defeated, his gray skin pale under the harsh lighting of his bridge. When he spoke, his voice carried none of the confidence it had held just 1 week ago. "Human vessels," Admiral Krickstahl said slowly, "I am Admiral Krickstahl of the Zephyrian Empire. I wish to discuss terms for the return of your your young ones." General Cole stepped forward, her expression hard as steel. "There are no terms to discuss, Admiral. You will return our children immediately and without harm. That is not a request." "Of course," the Admiral replied quickly. "But surely we can reach some agreement about compensation for our trouble, or perhaps an exchange of technology. No." The single word from General Cole cut through the Admiral's hopes like a blade. "You kidnapped our children. The only thing that matters now is getting them back safely. Everything else can wait." On the alien ship, Commander Vexenol leaned close to his Admiral's ear. "Sir, our sensors show that these human ships are armed with weapons we cannot identify. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Admiral Krickstahl nodded grimly. In the past week, he had learned more about human determination than he ever wanted to know. The ships surrounding them had been built in just 6 days, using technology that had been theoretical until the children were taken. Humanity had advanced their space program by 50 years in less than a week, driven by the simple need to save their young. "Admiral," came a new voice over the communication channel. It was Chris Johnson, speaking from somewhere inside the Zephyrian ship. "The other kids and I have something to say." The screen split to show the interior of the alien ship, where all 12 children and their 2 counselors stood together in what had once been a containment area. Now it looked more like a command center, with the children operating alien technology as if they had been born to it. Tyler Adams, who was 13, stepped forward to speak for the group. "We want everyone to know that we're okay. The aliens didn't hurt us, but they did something really stupid. They showed us how their technology works." Ben Carter grinned as he held up a small device that glowed with alien symbols. "Turns out their computers are actually pretty simple once you understand the basic principles. We've downloaded their entire database. Amy Rodriguez, still holding her jar of fireflies, added, "We also learned about something called the Galactic Council. Apparently, there are lots of alien species out there, and most of them follow rules about not kidnapping kids from primitive planets." Dr. Yixmora's voice could be heard in the background, speaking to Admiral Crickstall in their own language. Dr. Foster, who had been studying the alien transmissions, translated for the human crew. She's telling him that taking children from a protected species is a violation of galactic law, Dr. Foster said with amazement. Apparently, Earth was supposed to be left alone until we developed faster-than-light travel on our own. General Cole smiled grimly. Well, we have that now, don't we? The rescue proceeded smoothly, with the children transferring to the human ships using escape pods that Tyler Adams had reprogrammed to respond to Earth technology. As each child safely arrived aboard the Endeavour, their families back on Earth wept with relief and joy. But the real surprise came when Katie Bell, one of the camp counselors, brought Admiral Crickstall a datapad filled with information the children had gathered. "This contains detailed scans of your ship's technology," Katie explained calmly. "Medical databases about dozens of alien species. Star charts showing the locations of other civilizations. Everything your people have learned in thousands of years of space travel." Admiral Crickstall stared at the pad in horror. "You cannot take our knowledge. That information represents millennia of scientific advancement." Jake Morrison, the other counselor, shrugged. "You took our kids. We took your homework. Seems fair to us." "Besides," added Denny Price, the 11-year-old who had boosted the emergency signal, "we already transmitted copies to Earth. By now, every scientist and engineer on our planet is studying your technology." Dr. Alan Foster was practically dancing with excitement as he reviewed the alien data. "This is incredible. Faster-than-light communication, matter replication, energy shields. We've just jumped ahead by thousands of years." But General Cole was focused on something else entirely. "Admiral, I want you to deliver a message to this Galactic Council of yours." "What message?" Admiral Crickstall asked weakly. "Tell them that humanity is here now. Tell them we protect our own, and we don't forget when someone threatens our children. Tell them that Earth is no longer a primitive planet hiding in the outer rim of the galaxy." She paused, looking directly into the alien's large black eyes. "Tell them we're coming." The trip back to Earth took only 2 days using the alien technology the children had acquired. When they arrived, the entire planet was celebrating. The children became heroes, their story told in every language on Earth. But more importantly, their courage had changed humanity's place in the universe forever. 6 months later, Ambassador Janet Moore stood before the Galactic Council on a space station orbiting a distant star. She was humanity's first representative to the galaxy-wide government, and her message was simple but powerful. "We come in peace," she said to the assembled alien delegates, many of whom looked nervous at the sight of a human. "We seek friendship and cooperation with the whole species. But let there be no mistake about who we are or what we stand for." She gestured to a viewing screen that showed Earth's growing fleet of starships, all built using technology gained from the Zephyrian incident. "We are a species that protects its own. We are parents, children, families bound together by love that makes us stronger than any weapon. We do not start fights, but we will finish them." The council chamber was silent as Ambassador Moore delivered her final words. "Welcome humanity to the galaxy. We're here to stay." Back on Earth, 12 children who had changed the course of human history returned to their normal lives. They went to school, played with friends, and did homework just like any other kids. But sometimes, when they looked up at the night sky, they smiled at the knowledge that the stars were no longer beyond their reach. And across the galaxy, alien species whispered a new legend about the small blue planet where children could not. Be touched where families were sacred, and where love was the most powerful force in the universe. The legend of humanity had begun.